Hey friends, happy Wednesday. It's your friend Lisa Mason Ziegler, and what a beautiful, beautiful day it is here in Virginia. I hope you're having a great day regardless of what the weather's all about. So this is Ask a Flower Farmer, which we have, the Gardener's Workshop hosts this every week, and we have different hosts coming on and off, but this week the dice rolled and it was my turn to be up. So I'm happy to be here. And the way that this works is that if you see that little bubble down at the bottom of your screen with the question mark in it, that's where you can post your questions about anything to do with cut flowers. Growing cut flowers, selling cut flowers, starting seeds for cut flowers, anything about flower farming. I'll do my best to try to answer that for you. And while we're waiting for folks to join in with us here, I have a couple things to tell you about. So first off, we had our last big photo shoot this morning on the farm for the book. We still have a couple more photos to gather as things bloom. But this morning was some working images, like me in the garden doing stuff. Yeah, gosh, I'm so tired, y'all. It took me 2 days to get the garden ready. You know, this to kind of stage the images, you know what I mean? And then it takes like 22 seconds to take the picture. Anyway, I'm so pooped. So we really had fun this morning, and I will tell you that if you haven't already seen it, you have to go look. I posted on this past Saturday on Facebook and Instagram a flower arrangement that Bobo made in Grandpa Ziegler's wooden toolbox. It has over 8,500 likes on Facebook. We've never had anything to have that many likes before. So, totally beautiful. It's on Instagram, but isn't it funny how Instagram, I think it's got 1,000 likes or something, but on Facebook, it is all burnt up over there. So, anyway, this is that time. It's made with warm season and cool season. June is that month where they mesh, right? So that was really fun and exciting. Bobo's not even on social media, y'all. And if you don't know who Bobo is, Bobo has worked with us for, I think, like 14 years by now. And I came to know her 14 years ago because she is like a killer flower arranger. I mean, like, incredibly talented. And she would come buy flowers from me, and I hired her one day. Anyway, so she was very pleased this morning when I told her how many this morning she only had 7,500 likes on Facebook. Now it's up to 84, I think. Anyway, so that's been really fun for us, as June is always the month that almost put me under. Every year as a flower farmer, because cool flowers are still rocking and rolling, and the warm season are rocking and rolling, and we're about there right now. It's just kind of crazy busy. Speaking of which, if you haven't already heard, you are invited to our open farm. We do it once a year. It is June 24th, rain or shine, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and you can learn more about it either through my profile here on Instagram. You can just go there and follow the link, or gardenersworkshop.com/openfarm, one word. And we have people coming from all over the country. It's a really humbling experience for me. And it's a bit of a free-for-all. But we love doing it, and we're actually this year having uniform parking. My church is at the end of the street, and everybody's parking there and walking down. It's about a third of a mile, 10 houses or something. And anyway, we would love to have you. And this warehouse is open. This warehouse is never open. We don't have a store, and people love coming. We always have a little special going on. And so we have 2 locations 4 miles apart, and you are invited to come to that. So now that, so the book deadline, the ultimate deadline for everything, the manuscript's been gone. To finish the pictures is June 30th. The open farm's June 24th. And you know what we decided the other day? We are closing. We're taking the Monday off from 4th of July. So we'll be actually closed for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. A 4-day weekend, because Suzanne and I and Susie and Jesse all work on Friday because we do the live shopping show, which will be on. Anyhow, tired just talking about all this, y'all. You can learn more about all of it at thegardenersworkshop.com. And now we got some questions. So let's see what's on y'all's mind. Question, Hay Hill House, why are my pro-cut sunflowers having multiple buds? That is a common question at this time of the year. So stress, and it can be any stress. Temperature swings, too wet, not enough wet, pest pressure, anything that stresses them. And typically, the earlier in the season it is, that can kind of be what the craziness is. But that's their reaction to stress, we've learned. And there'll be a rash of it. And it's so funny because, we all instantly think, oh my gosh, it was the seeds and there's something wrong with them. But it's so funny because we work from bags of 10, 20,000 seeds, right? How it'll happen, and then we keep starting seeds, and guess what? It's totally, we've learned, environmental of some kind. So just keep on planting every week, and that issue should resolve. All right, how do you keep small bugs from eating sunflower petals? So I'll answer that, and I want to say that if you have a question for me, please put it down in the bubble with the question mark, because that way I won't miss it when we're scrolling, while we're actually scrolling through. So the way that you keep all flowers most pristine, meaning all the spots and chew marks on flowers are pest damage, right? Spots are bug poop and pee, and chew marks is them chewing. And so the first line of defense to totally keep your blooms as perfect as physically possible is to harvest at the correct stage. So if sunflowers are your problem, sunflowers are pretty much harvested. If my fingers are the petals and this is the disc in the middle, when those petals start kind of fattening up, and as the first one begins to lift, that's when we cut them, especially in the heat of summer, because not only do they move fast, but the pest pressure is at its height. And so harvesting them before they open is the answer to that question. What is the best stage to harvest Bupleurum? So Bupleurum has a wide opportunity of harvest. So the earliest that you want to cut it is when almost all of, Bupleurum has multiple flowers, right? It's like a spray with lots of little flowers. You want 3 or 4 of the flowers to be fully populated with open blooms, right? Because there are those little teeny yellow flowers. And you'll soon figure it out because they'll wilt if they're too immature. But also I find that we have to harvest it here in the South early in the morning when at least, 3 or 4 of those flowers are almost completely open, the big flowers that are made up of the little flowers. And then most people don't strip them hard enough. You just have to remember that the only part of a flower that contributes to your bouquet usually is the top 4 to 6 inches. All that mess below that needs to be removed. And so that will help you. And we definitely use hydrating solution if needed. But yeah, that really helps. Any thoughts on starting a moss garden? I have, it's so funny you should ask that. So I have a Billy Biggs shade garden. And I have lots of rocks on the border of that big hellebore, and it's got some Solomon seal and different things in it. There are a few rocks in there, big ones, that came with moss, and it does come and go. I don't have nearly enough moisture in my situation to actually maintain a moss garden, I don't think. So, sorry, I know absolutely nothing about it, except all I know is they need moisture and shade. Same growing zone. When are you sowing sunflowers for the last time? So I would count back. So we are sowing pro cuts, and pro cuts are 60 days basically from seed to bloom. And my first historic fall frost is mid-November. And even though we're the same zone, that does not have anything to do with our frosts. There are people in my zone that get frost in mid-October because they're in the mountains, right? So I count back 60 days from that mid-November, and that is where you have 60 days till your first frost. Well, I always go 2 to 3 weeks beyond that date because sometimes it doesn't happen on time. Sometimes it happens a little bit, but that doesn't hurt the sunflowers and they keep going. So that's that's kind of how I calculate it. Have you succession planted Saponaria? No. Well, I take that back. I'll have to, good question. So, we fall plant Saponaria. It is winter hardy here for me in 8A, 7B, which is I live literally right on the cusp of those winter hardiness. So I can fall plant it. Well, we winter killed some of it last year. Totally not Saponaria's fault. It was our fault. And so when we had that spring-like weather in early March, I definitely direct sowed some more because I was desperate for book pictures, right? And I had already planned to buy some from another local flower farmer, but I thought, what the heck, I'm going to try it. And I did direct sow it in this very early spring, which I don't normally do. But y'all, we had 4 weeks in the 70s just about, in and out of cool nights, warm days, and it did beautifully. So normally, no. But this year I did, but hopefully, who knows what the future holds for the weather. But, we don't typically, any of those things, because it's borderline. It's only like 24 to 30 inches tall for us, maybe 36. But it worked out really well. We got 24-inch stems with very early spring. So I say if it's a really good crop for you, I would definitely fall and then very early spring if it's winter hardy. My peonies are done blooming, but the foliage is covered in powdery mildew. Should I cut it or leave it? That is a question. You need to take Dave Dowling's class. He is the perennial walking encyclopedia. The foliage is what makes the blooms for next year. I do know that. So you don't want to remove the foliage. And I don't even know that you want to treat it. I wonder if that's botrytis or what exactly that really is. So that would be a question. Dave was here last week. I wish we'd had that question for him. So I cannot answer that. I'm not your peony specialist, but I happen to have seen Wanda, her handle, come by here. Wanda Fox Hollow Peonies is on here. She is a peony grower. She might be able to answer that question for you. So you might DM her, but I can't answer that. But I think the foliage is pretty important for next year's bloom, so I wouldn't be quick to take that off. Hi, Lisa. Can you succession plant pincushion? I'm in the Pacific Northwest. First frost, October 20th. So funny enough, I used to, before I knew more about cool flowers, and before I knew pincushion scabiosus is a cool flower, I used to plant it late spring, and it never got nearly as tall. Our scabby is as tall as I am. It's unbelievable, really. We're still harvesting tons of that. And so I would say Pacific Northwest, you aren't quite maybe as hot and humid as we are. I would go for it and try it. I don't know what day length requirements are, if the fall would, mess it up. But in doubt, I think planting 5-foot sections of a bed, so 5 feet of a bed would be 4 rows for me. So, that's like 80 plants or whatever. That's a good test, So certainly I would try that out and see what happens. I see that there are snapdragons that can bloom in the fall. Does this mean the ones I fall planted last year will come back and bloom? I'm in 10A and they all seem to be finishing up. I planted some of each group. So there are some fall blooming, well, it's not fall blooming, they're short day snapdragons. That's one of the groups, which I don't memorize all of that stuff. I can't remember if that's Maryland and Chantilly maybe. It's those ones that bloom super early in the spring when the days are still short. So you can get those to bloom in the fall, but that's typically fresh plantings, not ones from last year, because in 10A, that means you are deep south, and I doubt that those plants that you had blooming that you planted last fall are going to survive summer. they may survive, but they're going to be disease-ridden by the time the heat's finished with them and the humidity. So if you want to try to, you can probably, in 10A, you can probably fall plant from those short day varieties, which I believe, from memory, Chantilly and Maryland, I think is them. You could plant them and they'd probably bloom through the winter. But I don't think the ones from last year will survive your heat to actually get there. Landscaping got crazy and I never got zinnias, celosia, gomphrena, or cosmos seeded. Should I just direct sow at this point, zone 6A? So first off, it is quicker to get plants starting indoors than it is to direct sow, in my experience, and a whole lot less work. So we are still succession planting. Bobo is starting seeds tomorrow. And let's see, this is early June. We'll be planting again. We'll be starting seeds again at the end of June. So you just have to count back, I would say 120 days from your first frost date. Your zone means nothing about when your frost comes. So most of those flowers you just mentioned need about 90 days to grow up and start blooming, and then you want to be able to have them time to bloom, right? Cosmos, for sure, you need to start because fall is their season. So Bobo literally planted a bunch of cosmos this morning, or finished planting, and some transplants. And it's, for us, it's just quicker and less work and less risk of failure by starting indoors versus starting outdoors. You have no control over that, over outdoors. When is the last possible time to direct seed cosmos? So I don't direct sow, so I can't answer that. But again, you just need to look at the days to bloom. Look at the packet. If it says 90 days to blooms or 60 days, I don't even have any clue on cosmos what that date is. And then know what your first frost date is. And then give them at least 30 days to bloom. Add that all up and see where you are. I would guess that you may have time. Some of our florists who we sell flowers to are having struggling businesses because of the economy. Did you ever lower your prices for certain florists, or did you just set your prices and if they couldn't buy them, you might just lose them? No, I never lowered my prices because guess what? Your costs and expenses are not getting any lower either. I understand that, but you selling them cheaper flowers are not going to save their business. And that's, no, I never did that. And that's a shame. That's pretty sad. And we don't see that here where we are. The economy's just kind of bumping right along, but we live in the second largest metropolitan area in the state of Virginia. So it's just still high demand. And what I would say is if I was you, I always had 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 outlets for my flowers so that perhaps if one had an issue, like farmers markets, if it rained, I had other outlets that I could sell my flowers to that week. So no, I never did that. That's not good business practice, but it's not going to help save or make much difference to their business, right? And kind of sets a precedent. My sunflowers that I started in seed trays are blooming on 12-inch stems. I planted them out about a month ago, about 6 inches apart. Is this a water, fertilizer, root bound, or something else? So the big question I would say is, as is the answer to a lot of the stress questions for troubles with flowers sometimes, is they're stressed. And how long? They're only supposed to, sunflowers should only sit in a tray for 2 to 3 weeks at the most, 3 weeks at the most, because then they do start getting stressed. And if they're blooming on short stems, could be day length. I don't know where you are in the world. But yeah, so it could be any of those things. And so, my method of madness for all that stuff is just keep planting and learn from my mistakes and see what happens next. Most often, we don't really ever know what actually caused some of the problems, but you just have to keep moving on and think about, well, maybe it was that. I'll just be sure not to do that again. I'm clearing up a branching sunflower patch that is spent. Some of the plants were diseased. Should I plant something different there because of the disease? I wasn't sure if I should spray fungicide regularly to reset the area. I would never recommend spraying a fungicide. We don't use any chemicals like that. I mean, that does as much harm as good. And so simple rotation and building healthy soil will definitely resolve that problem. So if you did have disease problems there, I would not plant sunflowers there again this time. And so I would just plant something different there for sure and work on the health of your garden and the health of that soil. If deer ate the tops of my pro-cut sunflowers, varmints, should I just pull them out? They won't flower right. They might send up some little side shoots that won't really be usable, I don't think. So yes, if you're short on space, I would definitely pull them out and plant more. Sorry, dadgummit. I was just showing Steve my editor, which is Savvy Gardens. She's one of the authors over there. It's a conglomeration of 3 writers, gardeners that have that. Anyway, she showed a video of her deer-proof garden that they built a enclosure around it. It's really pretty and attractive. And I said, that's what we need to have for our vegetables, because the deer, when you grow vegetables, I mean, we don't have much pressure on our flowers because I have so many neighbors. That's a gift of living in the city and farming in the city. There are so many other options. The slightest thing I do to deter the deer really works because they'll just go next door and eat some shrubs or whatever. But the minute we plant tomatoes or strawberries or anything like that, it just brings them in, and it's just so disappointing. So I'm sorry your sunflowers got ate. Kim, my straw flowers are beautiful, but cutting when 2 to 4 brackets are open, they go flop. Any tip? Zones 7B, 8A near Raleigh. Thank you so much. So Kim, so funny you should say that, because we actually did a big photo shoot with straw flowers this morning, and I know exactly what you're talking about. So here is my take on straw flowers. First off, they were a huge crop for us. Now, if you're planning on drying them, then it's super important to harvest them as the first 2 to 4 layers of petals open. So you really can't even see the center yet. Because when you cut them past that stage, they tend to shatter later in life. However, I found for fresh use with no hopes of dry deal, because we used them in bouquets all the time. I mean, they were such a staple for us. We allowed them to open more, which allowed their stems to firm up a little bit more. So you kind of have to experiment, but anything past that. So, I mean, I cut 2 huge bucketfuls this morning. I'll tell y'all. So we had 2 buckets full, all the different colors that we sell, right? And I kept all the colors together, and then we decapitated them all to make a special picture, and we had so much fun. Can't wait for y'all to see it in the book. So I got an up-close look at all the different stems as I was doing that, and certainly the ones that are more open have stiffer stems. So, Kim, I don't know if that helps you or not, but that really is how I do it. And those that were the middle central flower that you knew bloomed first, some of those were actually dirty because I was saving them until the photographer came. I cut them yesterday. And so you just have to really keep a really close eye on, especially the white, and that beautiful silvery rose color is just so very, very beautiful. All right, so let's see. Straw flowers should be planted when in 8A. So, Tanya, straw flowers are a cool flower, which means they're a cool season hardy annual. They're not winter hardy enough for me in 8A to fall plant, but that's okay because we've learned that not fall planting them still grows an amazing, I mean, they are like almost chest high on me. So we plant them in the first planting in very early spring. which for me is mid-February. Ground is still cold and wet. We often have snow. It's still freezing out. Strawflowers just can't take a whole winter of cold. They can take the cold. So that gives us the very first blooms. If I was doing a bouquet business, farmer's market, selling to florist, any, business people, I would definitely succession plant strawflowers. Start very early spring, and then every 4 weeks have transplants coming along. While they will rebloom, I saw some really nice branching going on when I cut yesterday. You can just never have enough. It flowed. Them in combination with marigolds, coxcomb, and sunflowers is what we floated a killer supermarket bouquet business on. And my sister, I'm surprised she's not hollering in here. She wanted one killer strawflower stem, that first central with 4 or 5 flowers to put in the middle of every bouquet, because the rest of it is just icing on the cake. So strawflowers we're starting more of those probably tomorrow. But we have found that even strawflowers love to become established when it's cool soil, or can become established in cool soil, but they also tolerate warm soil. They won't be as tall as the ones I have now, but who needs a 48-inch strawflower, right? 24 inches is more than enough, and they're still taller than that even when you start them throughout the summer. So strawflowers, I think, could actually be on the warm season recipe rotation as well. And so, friends, let's see what... All right, so I'm going to answer this question, and then our time, I'm sure, will be up. Do you have any advice on battling black spots on zinnias? We've been removing the leaves, but don't seem to be getting them under control. Well, so first off, you need a diagnosis. There are several different zinnia diseases, and we don't treat anything because, first off, as a commercial grower, there's just not time in the day to do that, and you still perhaps don't have such a great rate of success in doing that. So that is one of the many reasons why we succession plant throughout our whole farm. So if a patch gets disease, and we had mildew out of the gate this year. It was crazy. Warm in March, and then it turned to spring, and we're still having spring-like weather here. We're finally heating up during the days. All of that stressfulness really stresses zinnias and sets them up for disease and pests. And y'all, it is scientific now. We know that when plants are stressed or you're not meeting their needs, they send a red flag up the post that says diseases and pests come and get us. That is a really big part of my book. Sharon, you don't have to figure out what to do about all this stuff, y'all. You need to work on making your spot healthy and happy and planting at the right time with healthy transplants, and the rest of the problems just don't really happen, right? So to answer your question, to battle it, we grow healthy. We don't fertilize zinnias once they're planted, and we take out crops that start getting really diseased. And I don't leave any leaves on zinnias. We never have. And so that is my method of battle. Grow healthy and remove crops. And if you have the opportunity, if you're a big grower, you just have to mow them and till them, unfortunately, because that'll put the spores right back where they were. But removing the crop and trashing it would be my number one choice if you don't have a really huge bed. So, friends, I hope you'll join me this Friday on our app, our live shopping show. I think I'm going to have something pretty exciting to show you guys. So they didn't confirm yes or no before I came on here if that's actually what we're doing. But trust me, looks like FedEx is getting ready to back in. Big truck. Sorry. So the show is at 12 noon on Fridays Eastern Time. It's inside our app for the best experience, where you get the most options with the least amount of button hitting. And I'd love to have you join me. It'll be the most beautiful zinnia harvest of the year. The beds they haven't been cut. Hardly. I mean, I think we had a few last week. We are going to have so many beautiful honkin' zinnias to show off. And there's still time to start zinnias. There's still time to start cosmos here where we are. My first frost is in mid-November, so we still have plenty of time. And so I hope you will join me. If you don't have our app, just go to your app store, search Gardener's Workshop. It's free. Download it. And I will see you Friday at 12 noon. And I hope you're putting it on your calendar to come on down for our open farm. I would love to meet you. And so would Tucker. Will be there with his Wrangler. Ellen will be his sidekick for the show. And guess who else is going to be there? Dave Dowling, Ellen Frost, and now Val Shermer is also joining us. These are all just leading flower farmers and farmer. Ellen is actually a designer that only uses local flowers. And they're all going to be on the farm for you to pick their brain if you can get to them and ask questions. All right, friends, until we meet again, ciao.